So you've watched archery on TV, you've seen it at the Olympics, maybe you've seen it in films, but what is all the stuff that's on a recurve bow? Why is there, so many things attached? What does everything do? That is what I'm going to explain in this video and give you a complete overview of what the Olympic recurve bow is made up of. Now here is a typical Olympic recurve style bow that you would have seen at the World Championships, at Olympics, probably not in films, but this is made of a riser, the central part, a riser, limbs, string, sight, stabilizers, grip, button, clicker on this side, and then finally the arrow rest, which is just here. And this is where the arrow rests on. This is the other side of the button I showed you. So that's what makes up a bow in the Olympics, and now I'm going to show you each individual part and what it does. So to begin with, the riser, this is the central unbending part of the bow, often made from metal or carbon. This one is made from aluminium. Then into this riser you have the limbs, they slot in. These are primarily either made of foam, carbon, wood. These ones are wood core limbs. They're laminated lengthways like this, and then these are where the energy of the bow is stored. This is the part of the bow that bends. As you draw the bow back, you can see, if you watch the tip here, you can see as you draw the bow back, the limb bends. This is where the energy is stored, and when you release the arrow, the limbs go forward, and this is what propels the arrow to the target. The string is what attaches the limbs together, puts some pre-tension on them, and on the string you have this central portion, which is where you place the arrow, and this is the center serving, and these are the knocking points. You place the arrow in between these knocking points, and that makes sure that when you put the arrow on the string, it's in the same place every time, it doesn't move, and you'll get a consistent up and down impact on the target because you're putting it on the same place every time. So that's a super important part of the equipment as well. Similarly, the arrow rest ensures that the position of the arrow on the bow is in the same place each time, because you're resting the arrow on the arrest and it's on the string here between the knocking points. So those are a couple of key points there as well. Now, probably the most obvious question is, why are there crazy long rods? You probably don't call them long rods. Why there's these crazy sticks on the end of the bow? These are what we call stabilizers. This is what we call a long rod. This is the one that's out here. Then you have the side rods. Then you have the extension here, which is this one. So this setup differs. You might see some people with no extender. You might see some people with longer side rods. You might see some people with more weight on the stabilizers. The general purpose of the whole stabilizer setup is to improve aiming, reduce shock, and as the name suggests, make the bow more stable during the shot and on release as well. So these are a couple of general things that the stabilizer setup does. If you shoot without stabilizers, it's generally harder to aim. There's more vibration in the bow. When you release, the bow doesn't have as good a direction, and these are really quite a useful, important part of a modern Olympic bow setup. If you draw up the bow with these stabilizers on, you'll get a nice floating aim that moves slowly, and obviously this is a lot easier to aim with. There'll be a nice slow movement and you can aim in the middle. If I drew the bow up without these stabilizers, the sight would very quickly vibrate back and forth, and it's much more unsettling and it's harder to aim properly. So these are an essential part of a modern Olympic archer's technique and equipment as well. Now when it comes to the grip on the bow, here you have the grip, and this is where the archer puts their hand and contacts the bow. So this is an area of important customization, because this is where they locate the hand and how you direct the bow to the target, hold it during the shot, and so on. So this is quite an important part. Can be made of wood. This one's made of plastic. It just depends, and you can modify these as well, and archers do. So as we're round this way as well, the sight is probably one of the most interesting parts that you want to look at. Now this sight works by, when you're shooting the bow, you can see the sight aperture here. You can see this. You line up this with the gold where you're aiming, and you simply line it up, position it onto the gold, and that's how you shoot. The string here acts as your rear sight. So in the same way as with a gun, you have a rear sight. This string, when you draw the bow and come here, you see archers have the string on the face at full draw. This string acts as a rear sight, and when you change that alignment like this as a rear sight, that will obviously change the impact left and right of the arrow. So this is another important part of modern Olympic archery. Now in order to use the sight, what it does is it moves on the sight bar, it moves up and down. So at the moment the sight is at the top. This would be for a short distance. If you want to aim at a longer distance, you simply move the sight down. Now the sight is lower, and this is for a longer distance. It also moves in and out this way, which helps adjust for the horizontal impact of the arrows. And you'll see at World Championships, at the Olympics, you'll see archers moving the sight to adjust where the arrow is going on the target. And this is a really important part of general competing and shooting at a high level as well. Now we move on to the clicker. This is basically a small device. It does exactly what it sounds like. It clicks. The arrow goes under this device, and it's used as a draw length check to make sure that you draw the bow the same amount each time, very precisely, and to give you an indication of the fact that you're ready to shoot, everything's in a good position, and you're ready to execute the shot. So the arrow goes underneath, you come to your anchor position, you come to that full draw position that you've seen, and then you do a tiny, tiny movement that you can almost barely see with the top archers, and this expands through the clicker and shoots the shot. So this is another really important part of technique. These clickers are super cheap, you know, maybe $10, you know, £7, something like that. But this is a really important part of any modern archer's, you know, equipment. So that's really important. The button here is basically a barrel here with a spring in it and a small plastic button here. This is used to adjust to the tuning of the bow and do some fine tuning to basically make the arrow react more forgivingly. So if the archer does some mistake, so they release badly or they make some other mistake, they're not penalized as much at the target. So when you use this button correctly and set up your bow, you should be able to make a small mistake and only have a small impact on the target. Whereas if you haven't got the correct tuning of your equipment, then if you make a small mistake, the arrow might be way out in the blue, or maybe in the, you know, even in the black or something. So having the correct tune, using this button correctly is really, really important. So those are the basic parts of the recurve bow. And now there are some other additional parts that you've probably wondered what they are. For instance, this here is an arm guard. This is to protect the arm from the string as the string leaves the bow and propels the arrow. So this is just purely protective. It's not for anything else. Some archers don't need it, but a lot of archers do use it, and it's just to protect from string burn as the arrow leaves the bow. As well, there's a finger sling. This is simply a little piece of rope. This is a bit of shoelace that you tie around the bow like this. And this then allows you to, when you shoot, it allows you to roll the bow, and you don't have to. It allows you to roll the bow and you don't have to grip the bow, and it stays in your hand. So you can shoot and you don't have to grip like this, and it stays in your hand. So that is the finger sling. And then finally there are two other parts of the archer's equipment, which are the tab and the chest guard, and I'll show you those now. So the tab is this. It's normally some sort of solid material. This is metal with a small finger spacer on this side, and you wear it almost like a glove. So you put your fingers in there, the middle three fingers. So there's leather attached to this tab, as you can see. So it's got metal, and then there's some leather on there as well. And then what you do is you locate this on the string, and you use that to draw back the string so that when you release, it doesn't hurt your fingers. So it's really important because it helps you get a clean release. It makes, you know, a lot more useful in terms of it doesn't destroy your fingers when you shoot. Clean release, pain-free, more consistent, and also helps if it's raining and stuff like that. So this is another really important part of the equipment. And like the grip as well, this is custom to the archer. So people will modify this. You know, this one's ground down. I've modified the shape, changed the leather, changed everything about it. This is custom to the archer. Then the chest guard is the final part of the archer's equipment, and I'll show you that now. So this chest guard, in the same way as the arm guard, is just for protection. So you might have seen this and wondered what on earth it is. Simply, you put it around and you clip it on. And this is to prevent the string catching the clothes. It basically pulls the clothes in, makes sure they're tight to the body, and prevents the string catching them. So if this were to happen, the arrow would definitely impact very far from the middle. It would have a huge effect. So you never want the string to hit the clothes or any part of the clothing. So this is what the chest guard's for. In the same way to the arm guard, not every archer uses this, but it's a very useful piece of equipment. You'll see most archers use this. So that is the chest guard. Now, finally, there's one other part of equipment, which is of course the arrow. Now, obviously arrows used to be wooden, very basic, feathers on the end. Now arrows are made from carbon. This is an aluminium core with carbon wrapped around. The point is made from tungsten. These are super durable points made from tungsten. They inserted and glued into the arrow on the end. You then have what we call the nock, which is this plastic part here. This is what clips onto the string in between the nocking points, as I described earlier. And then finally you have the fletches. And these are effectively modern day equivalent of the feathers, and they're made from thin plastic, and they're used to stabilize the arrow and make it spin so that it stabilizes on the way down to the target. And you'll see these, every archer uses fletches. The exact model does differ, but they all serve exactly the same purpose. So that was a complete overview of the Recurve Olympic bow, all the equipment that's on it, why it's there. I hope you found that useful. Be sure to smash that like button, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel, where this is all about Recurve Olympic archery, how you can learn it, get proper technique, improve your preparation, training, that sort of thing. So subscribe to the channel, and as always, I will also put the social media links down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.